find it strange that you would say bad things about my mother-in-law. If you're not working, why don't you get out of here? While they didn't know I was taking on my mother-in-law's debt, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law said these things to me with no thanks at all. Yes, I understand, but it's up to you guys from now on. They put their heads together the day I packed my bags because they knew I had been hiding. Hi, my name is Emma. I am 32 years old and work full-time in a job in the city. When I was in school, I liked to read and spend most of my time in the library in a spot. I forgot to take time for myself after I got a job because I had so much to do. Emma, why don't you try to cherish your love life a little? Asked a friend who really cared about me. Then she set up a blind date for me with a group of people. John was the name of the guy whose eyes met mine that night. He worked in a building in the middle of the city. He was new to the job and, to my surprise, seemed to be interested in me. I was worried about going on a date after being single for so long, but his kind words helped us slowly open our hearts to each other. Then he told me something softly, and our love grew stronger. We chose to get married just 1 year later. I had been so focused on my work that being at such a great turning point in my life felt like a dream come true. My friend who set up the blind date for the group was also surprised by how quickly we grew. "Oh, really?" she asked. "Are you getting married?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?" "But it's great. I'm so glad I organized that group blind date." "Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the wedding." "I'm looking forward to it too." Thus, I was to open the door to a new life. First, we reported to each other's families. Seeing me so happy, my parents welcomed him warmly. "Emma, you haven't told me about your boyfriend for a long time, so I was a little worried that maybe you wouldn't get married. John, please take care of her from now on." When I heard these words, I realized for the first time what my parents really thought of me. I realized that parents think a lot of things without saying them. My family had basically let me do whatever I wanted, so there was no pressure to get married. But it seems that in my parents' minds, there was a wish to see their daughter happily married someday. Knowing this warmed my heart. When I visited John's house for the first time, I met his family with nervous excitement. His mother and father were both very warm and made me feel very safe. Next, we had dinner with the whole family. While I was looking forward to it, I was also a little nervous, especially because I had heard that John's sister, Melissa, was there. She was only 25 years old, and her choice of words was a little rough at times, which confused me. She asked, "Emma, you're already at that age, aren't you? Weren't you getting married too late?" I was a little shocked to hear her say, "I would have decided sooner if I were you." But John followed up, and we had a nice dinner afterward. We then planned our wedding and had a beautiful ceremony at a place we loved. We had a lot of friends and family there, and the day was really great. Our honeymoon was so much fun, and when we returned home, we started our new life together. Life was fresh, and every day was so much fun. We went out on dates and watched movies at home. I felt that newlyweds were truly happy. It has been about 2 years since we got married. One day, our peaceful life changed drastically when we received the news that my father-in-law had passed away. Of course, I knew he had health problems, but I had not expected him to pass away so soon. My husband and I were deeply saddened by this sudden news. My mother-in-law's grief was especially deep, and I could feel her emotions as I looked at her. But our surprise was compounded by what we subsequently found out. In fact, my mother-in-law was in deep debt. It was apparently due to being cheated by an unscrupulous person, causing her to lose a large sum of money. When we learned of this, we could only gape. My husband, with his usual gentle nature, said he wanted to help her somehow, so we decided to use our shared savings to reduce my mother-in-law's debt as much as possible. I thought it would be too hard for her to bear that heavy debt alone after my father-in-law's death. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was unexpected. She said something like, "If I am in trouble again, can I ask John for help?" My husband was a little surprised and replied, "That's a little..." My mother-in-law said something positive like, "But I'll find a way to get more money somehow." My husband was worried. "I hope that's not gambling." We kept a watchful eye on her, on the lookout for any trouble she might get into again. In the midst of all this, my husband was suddenly injured and had to be hospitalized. That event also became a big ordeal for both of us. Since every day was spent flitting back and forth from the hospital to take care of him, I never noticed any changes in my mother-in-law's daily routine. Then, one day after my husband was discharged, I decided to visit his parents' home. During our first reunion in a long time, I sensed something had changed in the atmosphere. "Mom, long time no see." My husband greeted her with a smile. My mother-in-law responded, "John, you're getting better. Can you run again?" She smiled at him. While smiling at this exchange, my husband began to flip through my mother-in-law's bank book. To his surprise, the money in her account, which we had accumulated after paying off her previous debts, was almost completely gone. "What's wrong with this bank book, Mother?" my husband exclaimed in surprise. With a slightly embarrassed smile, she replied, "You know, I had tea with friends and found a nice little bag, and then I found myself in this mess." She laughed bitterly. With that one word, my husband and I froze in complete surprise. It was as if we had saved money for our mother-in-law's future, and she had spent it happily without a care in the world. My husband couldn't help but say, "Mom, you shouldn't spend it like this. Do you know how much we put our hearts into giving you money for your future?" He said something like that. Seeing my mother-in-law's remorse, we became truly concerned about her future. We suggested that she move in with us to support her life closer to us. When we broached the subject, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up with joy, and she gave up her house and moved into our apartment. Our new shared life together began, and my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy every day of it. The three of us laughed and talked around the table at every meal. My mother-in-law volunteered to help with the housework, which made life surprisingly easy for both of us. Her upbeat mood was infectious, and our days became brighter and warmer. I said, "Mom, what would you like for lunch today?" I think I'll have udon," she replied. "That sounds good." Since I was working remotely, I was in a position to monitor how my mother-in-law spent her money. Since my husband and I provided her living expenses, and my husband managed my mother-in-law's account, there was supposed to be no worry about her spending excessive money. However, we kept a close eye on her, worried that she might spend the money in some way. These days continued, and in no time at all, 6 months passed. One afternoon, while we were relaxing in the living room, the intercom rang. We wondered who it was, and when I answered, I found my sister-in-law, Melissa, standing there. I said, "Melissa, it's been a while. Is my mother there?" I was a little surprised to hear her ask such a question without even saying hello, but I showed her into the living room. "Mom, it's been a while." "Oh, Melissa, what brings you here?" "I just wanted to see your face once in a while." "Thanks, I'm glad you're here. How are you?" "Of course, I'm fine. John is with me, so do you want to go to lunch with me?" "Sure, let's go." Melissa must have taken my mother-in-law to a restaurant or something. We decided to wait at home. When they came home in the evening, we looked at them, and their faces had changed. Then Melissa said, "Emma, you are tormenting my mother, aren't you?" I was surprised and could not understand what she was saying. My mother-in-law also looked at me sternly. My husband said, "What are you talking about? There is no way Emma would do such a thing." He immediately took my side, but Melissa would not budge. John is being deceived too. Mom says she can't go outside, and she hears Emma saying things inside the house. We could only be amazed. Indeed, there were times when my mother-in-law would ask to go shopping, and we would refuse because she would waste money. Also, my mom said you were taking her money. I had to admit that this statement surprised me. Did my mother-in-law think so, or did Melissa twist it that way? In any case, it seemed that Melissa and my mother-in-law had joined together in accusing me. Now, what do you want from me? I was about to feel like I was bewitched by a fox. What on earth did they want to tell me? At that moment, my sister-in-law said something I never thought she would say. She said, "I want you to leave our house. I feel like my mother can't really live happily with you because I can't believe you treat my mother-in-law so coldly." Her face clouded over. My mother-in-law looked as if she wanted to say something and turned to me. "If you were gone, I would be able to relax and enjoy my time with John and Melissa." I was surprised by her words, but I could not say anything. In fact, they did not know that I had previously paid off her debts for my mother-in-law by cutting into my savings. Looking back, I probably should have made it clear to them at the time that I had not taken it out of our marital savings, but my own. When I looked at my husband's face, he looked very angry. His hands were clenched, and his body was shaking a little. Melissa said, "My mother and I are going to live here together from now on, so I want you to leave." My sister-in-law said again, taking a deep breath. For a moment, I answered my sister-in-law, "I understand, but I won't get involved in what happens next." After that exchange, my husband and I decided to leave the house. On the day we moved out, they were surprised to discover one truth. "Looks like you've made arrangements to move out right away, after all," said Melissa. "Yes, I have something to tell Melissa." "Yes, what is it?" she asked. My husband chuckled and said, "Actually, I'm getting older, and I was thinking that I should put the house in Melissa's name." My sister-in-law's eyes sparkled, and she said, "Really?" "It's going to be my house," she said excitedly. My husband quietly produced the documents for the change of name and said, "As long as you sign here, that's all right." My sister-in-law happily said, "I can't believe I have my own apartment," and signed it. My husband and I looked at each other stealthily and exchanged smiles at the success of our plan. "Well, it's time to start getting ready to leave," my husband said. "What? John, are you really leaving?" asked Melissa. "Yes, I've decided to leave too." "Oh, even John is leaving? Do you really have to leave with Emma?" "If I'm not with Emma, I don't feel comfortable either. It's normal for married couples to be together." "I knew you would say that. But then what are we going to do about future house expenses and stuff?" "That's something you'll have to devise and pay for on your own." "Wait a minute. I quit my job because I believed you would support me." Okay, my husband and I could not hide our surprise at my sister-in-law's sudden statement. "If you keep this up, you're going to get me and our mother into a lot of trouble." "That's fine. If you can devise a way to live on your own, you have our mother's pension, and if you save a little, you can manage." "Yes, and if you add my pension to that, we can manage." "Since you're going to live here, we need to be creative about it." My sister-in-law looked a little satisfied with my mother-in-law's kind words. "Indeed, it's my new home. If I save a little money, I should be able to get by." However, my husband and I laughed inwardly at my sister-in-law saying such a thing, not knowing that the property was a rental. About that time, the movers arrived. We welcomed them and began to move more and more stuff out. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law rolled their eyes at the sight. "What are you doing? Getting ready to move out? Are you taking everything?" "Of course. We bought all this stuff. Do I have to buy everything new?" "That's right. I wish you had known that and acted accordingly." "Well, we better get going." My husband smiled and said, and we left the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law froze in amazement for a while. After a while, my sister-in-law called my husband's cell phone. "Hey, John, what's with the RLE all of a sudden?" I was a little mistaken. Could it be that I am not the owner of this house? Who told you about that? Well, I'm actually renting this house. The document you signed at that time was the rental agreement, so it's only natural that you should be charged for the rent. Seriously? I didn't know that at all. It's where you live, so you have to pay the rent. But my salary is not that much compared to yours. You may laugh, but Emma actually makes more money than I do. Oh no, it's true. She is working hard at a remote company that pays pretty well. That's why we were able to live so comfortably in that apartment. My sister-in-law was so surprised that she was speechless for a while. Next, I heard my mother-in-law's worried voice. "We're so sorry," she said. "I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider and come back?" My husband responded gently, but firmly. "Thank you, Mother. But it's hard for me to go back because of your attitude toward Emma. She is the most important to me. Please take care of the rest. You will take care of it." After that exchange, I heard various rumors. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law had apparently been forced to look for an apartment after getting tripped up on rent payments. They are now trying to make do in a small apartment that is barely big enough for the two of them to live in. But it is said that they are having financial problems and occasional fights. They are also concerned about the neighbors' eyes on them. John and I have started a new life in our new house. Every day is fun and full of happiness. My name is Kristen. Despite being raised in a family that was far from wealthy, I managed to secure a job and get married through hard work. My husband, Matt, is an employee at a luxury hotel. I believed that Matt and I would live a happily married life. However, I never expected what ended up happening to me. I grew up poorer than the average family, but I never blamed my parents. Ignoring their own desires, they spent time taking me out and taught me about the local culture. Maybe they loved geography, but as a child, I worried they were overextending themselves. While I was grateful for my parents' efforts, I didn't want to be a burden. Therefore, I had decided to start working after graduating from middle school. My mother, thinking of my employment, advised, "It would be better to go to high school for your future." My father also supported me, saying, "We have enough money to cover your high school." I was happy my parents felt that way, but my desire to let them relax as soon as possible was stronger. "Don't worry. If I start working early in life, I learn more quickly," I said, without knowing if that would be true. The reality is there was no guarantee of finding a job at that time. However, I had a foreign friend who had moved from overseas when I was just starting middle school. Her name was Maya, and like me, her family was not wealthy. The commonality quickly brought us together, and we gradually became closer. Maya could speak a little English, so we managed to communicate. I naturally learned Spanish through my conversations with her. By the time I was in my third year of middle school, I could converse fairly well in Spanish. Even though I had only completed middle school, a travel agency decided to hire me because of my language skills. They valued my ability to speak Spanish. Maya also started working after graduating from middle school, and we didn't contact each other as often as we used to. Once I got a job, I worked very hard. I was desperate to earn an income. Soon, I turned 26. Around that time, there was a lounge in the luxury hotel I often used for work. It was comfortable, with casual meals and a cafe-style menu with reasonable prices. My colleagues and I often had meetings there. Matt was a waiter working in that lounge. The hotel had many guests from overseas, so Matt also spoke Spanish. I also sometimes dealt with foreign clients. Because we both could speak Spanish, Matt and I had a lot in common and felt a mutual attraction to each other. Matt approached me, and we started dating, leading quite smoothly to marriage. I never imagined that a girl from a poor family like me would get married. I feel moved just thinking about it. Anyway, I was looking forward to the new and enjoyable life that was about to begin, but an unexpected situation awaited me. Before the marriage, Matt made a proposal. If you're okay with it, I'd like to live together at my parents' house. The reason behind this was that Matt had lost his father a few years ago and was worried about his mother living alone. His mother's health had started to wane, so she needed someone to watch over her. At that time, I was a teleworker who could do most of my work from home, so I could take care of my mother-in-law and also handle the household chores. On the other hand, Matt himself often worked long hours, meaning he spent limited time at home. He rarely had days off, so it seemed convenient for him to have me, the worker, around. However, I couldn't just say yes to him. That was because when I met Matt's mother before the marriage, she gave me the silent treatment after hearing about my educational background. "Which university did Kristen graduate from?" she asked. I replied honestly, "Actually, I didn't go to college. I started working right after graduating from middle school." My mother-in-law just stared at me for a while and then fell silent. From her expression, I could clearly feel her disdain for me. You only went to middle school," she said, looking down on me with that gaze. From that experience, I felt that living with my mother-in-law would not go well. I conveyed this indirectly to Matt. "I feel like your mother doesn't like me much." "You feel like my mom is cold towards you? That can't be. She trusts me, and she would never think badly of the wife I chose," he said, laughing it off. I wondered if I was overthinking things. Matt also promised to talk to his mother if there were any problems. Trusting him, I agreed to live with my mother-in-law. However, once we started living together, I was unable to build a good relationship with her. I faced the gap between my ideal and reality. When Matt was around, his mother always greeted him with a warm smile, saying, "Matt, thank you for living with us. I really appreciate it." Matt would reply, "Of course. I thought it would make things easier for you." But her attitude towards me was completely different and terribly distant. She would say to me with little expression, as if giving orders to a servant, "Kristen, make sure you support Matt. Don't be a burden." It seemed like my mother-in-law was belittling me, but at that particular moment, Matt defended me, saying, "It's no problem. Kristen is doing her job well in her field." I did not miss the frown that comment brought to my mother-in-law's face. I decided to consult Matt if any problems arose in the future and to handle things in my own way. I thought living together would help us understand each other better. I didn't want our relationship as a family to become strange. With such hopes, we started living together, but it often didn't go so smoothly. One day, as I was working on my computer, my mother-in-law suddenly entered the room and demanded irritably, "Kristen, when will you clean my room? Make sure it's done by 10 a.m. every day." I was puzzled by this sudden demand. We had never discussed such roles or agreed on the extent of my household chores. I thought that if she had explained things nicely from the start, I might have understood. I wasn't always available due to my job, but thinking it childish to argue on the spot, I paused my work and replied, "Understood. I'll start right away," and began cleaning her room. Even at that time, my mother-in-law was often doing nothing but relaxing in the living room, watching TV and enjoying snacks. Although Matt was concerned about his mother's health, she seemed capable of cleaning the room by herself. I had thought she might be too frail to move, but she appeared quite energetic. After I finished cleaning, she said, "Now that you're done, I'm counting on you to prepare dinner. I prefer light seasoning, so no heavy flavors." As if giving orders, she even asked me to go grocery shopping. Although I thought it was too early to start preparing, I decided to get it over with before returning to my work. Upon returning from shopping, as expected, my mother-in-law was leisurely spending time in the living room. I felt irritated by the sight, but decided to put up with it and just follow her instructions. I told myself that she was probably testing me. I hoped that she would come to appreciate me. Over time, however, the situation continued for months. Sometimes, I was nagged for being 5 minutes late in bringing in the laundry or for having the bath water 1 inch too high. Before I knew it, I had taken on all the household chores, but my mother-in-law continued to spend her days carefree. Honestly, she seemed to have the energy to do the chores herself. I also knew that if this situation continued, it could negatively affect my work. Wanting to avoid that at all costs, I felt it was time to talk to Matt. So, I waited until nightfall, after my mother-in-law went to bed. I confided in Matt about these recent events. "Listen, your mother really doesn't like me. I'm going to be exhausted if this continues." But Matt half laughed and replied, "No way. That can't be. Mom is a kind person. As long as you don't do anything strange, there shouldn't be any problems. I'm counting on you to make the relationship work." He didn't take my concerns seriously, possibly because, in front of Matt, his mother always behaved kindly to me, even suggesting I take a break and have some coffee. However, even understanding the reality of the situation, I knew that my patience would reach its limit if this kind of life continued. I was burdened with household chores during the day and had to do my work through the night. Frankly, my trust in Matt was gradually fading. If this situation didn't improve, I might reach my limit. It was then that my mother-in-law made an unbelievable proposal. "Kristen, I'll be leaving the house empty for a week during the Easter holiday. I'm counting on you to take care of the household chores while I'm gone." Shocked by this sudden announcement, I asked, "What brought this on all of a sudden?" "Matt suggested it. He said we should go on an overseas trip. He's such a good son. He knows how much I love foreign countries. I can't wait for the Easter holiday in 3 months," she said excitedly. I was dumbfounded. I hadn't heard anything about such plans from Matt. Moreover, I was to be left behind to house sit all by myself. I realized that I needed to talk to Matt urgently. So once more, I waited until the evening. When I brought it up, Matt said, Mom already told you about it, but aren't you coming with us?" We were not on the same page. This meant that my mother-in-law had lied to me. Even though Matt explained things, the thought of going on a trip abroad with my mother-in-law was painful to imagine. I became emotional, wanting him to understand how much I was struggling. "I don't want to go. A trip with her would be no fun at all," I strongly exclaimed. However, Matt became angry and retorted fiercely, "Kristen, I can't believe you would say something like that. When will you stop acting like a child? I won't allow you to blame my mom. Think about what you've said. I'm looking forward to the trip." I was shocked. He didn't believe a word I had said. Staying in the house had become a painful situation. To make Matt understand that what I was saying was true, I decided to take action. The next day, Matt had a day off, and we were having breakfast with the 3 of us. I decided to speak directly to my mother-in-law. "Mother, is this plan for an overseas trip a way to exclude me?" I asked, and she blatantly answered, "Hump. I never said that. If you intend to come along, then you should. It would be better, wouldn't it?" But Matt intervened. "Kristen, you still don't understand the situation. You should apologize to Mom. Why are you so aggressive? You're not a child anymore." Nevertheless, what I had stated was based on facts. At this moment, more than ever, I wanted to make everything clear and assert myself. I wanted Matt to understand the truth. But before I could argue further, my mother-in-law hurled the most insulting words at me. "But you know what, Kristen? It's better if you stay home. You wouldn't understand the appeal of going abroad without ever having gone to high school. Besides, you just lay around at home without working anyway. You don't deserve to go abroad. You think so too, right?" she said. I was astonished. I had no idea that she thought I was unemployed. I explained my job when I met her. I'm sure I talked about what I do for work, didn't I? I countered. Then, with disdain, she said, "A job? Tell me, working? You must be joking. Just playing around with the computer at home? I've had enough of your idleness. You can't possibly be earning an income that way. You're just living off Matt's salary, aren't you?" This made me angry, but before I could respond, my mother-in-law added more. "For me, it's enough that Matt is here. He speaks Spanish and works at a top hotel. There's no need for someone like you, without an education or job, to use his income. People at the bottom like you should get out of our house." She was insulting me to her heart's content. Now Matt must have understood what I was talking about. I convinced myself of this and waited for his reaction. But what he said next was even more unexpected. "I can see where Mom is coming from, Kristen. You need some time to cool down." As if he was fed up, Matt said that to me. At that moment, my mind was made up. I could no longer stay with them. Even my husband, Matt, sided with his mother and refused to take my side. I was not needed here. And even if I was, I no longer wanted to live with these people. My mother-in-law told me to leave, but I confirmed just to be sure. "Are you really okay with me leaving?" I asked. Laughing, she replied, "Of course. Get out of here. You're a nuisance." So I said, "Understood," and started preparing to move to a new place. I simply nodded to them and left the house. As I did, my mother-in-law mockingly said, "Enjoy your pool life in a place that suits you." But they did not yet understand the repercussions that might come from this. About 3 months had passed since I left the house, and it was almost Easter holiday. After a long period with no contact, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "Kristen, I finally got through to you. What on earth happened?" She was clearly flustered. I replied calmly, "After saying such things to me, you have the nerve to call?" She said, "I couldn't reach you at all. I thought you changed your number, so I even contacted your parents' house asking for it." I had already informed my parents beforehand that Matt or my mother-in-law might contact them, and if they did, to give them this number. When I asked, "Is there some problem?" my mother-in-law responded with a shaken voice, "Problem? I've got a mountain of bills coming in. Do something." I didn't know anything about this. She was seeking help. "I guess you haven't been paying the utility bills, have you?" I calmly replied, but she seemed to have even more serious issues. "I thought Matt was handling the finances. I had no idea you were paying for everything. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. It was too late for her to be upset about it, but apparently Matt had finally told her the truth. In reality, I had leveraged my experience at a travel agency to start my own business, which had become an international success, now a company exceeding an annual turnover of $10 million. And to my mother-in-law's surprise, there was also a misunderstanding about Matt's income. Despite working at a renowned hotel, it didn't mean he was highly paid. In fact, he was an ordinary employee with an average income. The hotel had many Spanish-speaking staff. Being able to speak Spanish wasn't considered a special talent. It was impossible for his income to support a family of 3. It was a struggle even for him to support himself. Moreover, despite the fact that I was supporting the household, they remained oblivious about it until the notices arrived, which was quite ignorant of them. As I listened to my mother-in-law, an unbelievable truth came to light. The real reason Matt had proposed I live with his mother wasn't to take care of her. In fact, she had been living off the inheritance left by Matt's father. But she had squandered the fortune on a lifestyle, and now her assets were completely gone. In such a state, she had turned to Matt, who she thought was financially stable, for help. However, aware of his modest income and knowing that I was the breadwinner, Matt had ultimately turned to me for assistance. Hearing the story, I realized they were indeed a troubled pair, But the problems didn't end there. "Have you taken care of the credit card payments?" I asked, to which my mother-in-law raised her voice. "That's what I'm talking about. Both Matt and I have bills piling up." Actually, since I had started living with them, bills from credit card companies had begun arriving in both of their names. The monthly charges continued to rise, and before we knew it, they had ballooned to a significant amount. What luxuries they had indulged in without paying for the living expenses were unclear to me, but Matt's charges were clearly beyond his salary. My mother-in-law hadn't changed her extravagant ways, and now both were in debt. The total amount exceeded $20,000, which truly shocked me. Even more shocking was that she had said, "I thought something like a little debt would be handled by Matt." And Matt also thought, if we were really in trouble, Kristen would sort it out. I could hardly conceal my astonishment. They were both so entitled. It's hard to forgive adults who act so irresponsibly. It's not just appalling, it feels downright dangerous. Yet my mother-in-law had the audacity to say, "Given the situation, Kristen, you'll find us a solution, right?" I refused outright. "After the way you treated me, I see no reason to help you now." It seemed Matt was also there because he suddenly came on the line, insisting, "Kristen, you're my wife. It's your duty to take care of us. Find a way to help. We can't make the payments." I had no desire to deal with their shamelessness any longer, but I showed mercy. "Will you come to me? If you do, I might be willing to help to some extent." Matt seemed keen on the laughter. "Yeah, that sounds good. You'll provide a place to live and take care of the money, right? We'll come on over." "Where are you now? We'll leave right away. Tell me quickly." Despite his eagerness, I frankly said, "Of course, if you can make it, that is. I'm in the Bahamas. I have a villa here." Both Matt and my mother-in-law couldn't hide their astonishment. "La, what do you mean Bahamas? We can't possibly go to such a place right now," he said. The situation was tense, but I remained calm. "Is that so? But aren't you planning a trip abroad for the Easter holiday? Why not stop by the Bahamas then? Your mother would be pleased, right? By the way, you got my number from my parents, didn't you? Realize it was an international one?" I also reminded them, "Oh, and don't forget, this call is going to be quite expensive. Long conversations are tough on the wallet." Acting as if I wanted to continue the conversation, I added, "If we get divorced, I might reconsider the financial situation for you." Upon hearing this, Matt replied, "You're right. Okay, let's get divorced." He probably couldn't stand the burden of debt any longer. I informed him that I would come to hand over the divorce papers when I returned to the U.S. and ended the call. After I got back to the United States, I had him complete the divorce paperwork, and our separation was completed amicably about a week later. He had grown rather thin, perhaps having had a hard life in the last several days. Matt acknowledged that he had thought I would cover the expense of the international trip. It seems that they had believed that I would settle their obligations following the divorce, so hearing this no longer shocked me. Naturally, it was not my aim. I recommended that they both work hard and reduce their luxury spending. They could ultimately pay off their obligations and maintain a minimal quality of living if they followed my advice. Matt objected, saying, "Hey, that's not what you said," after hearing my response. "You promised to pay off the loan." "I did come up with a plan for you to repay your debts on your own," I shot back, a little sarcastic. "If you just do what I say, you should be good. Wishing you luck. You are also invited to come to my Bahamas property when you are able to afford a holiday overseas." After that, I walked away. Since then, they appear to be living life to the fullest and working non-stop from early in the morning until late at night. Maybe they needed to learn this lesson since it replaced their old lifestyle of laziness. Meanwhile, I learned that my longtime friend Maya had relocated to the Bahamas, which allowed me to finally catch up with her. Like me, she obtained an international career after middle school and rose to the position of company president. She gladly cohabitates with her parents after welcoming them into her new house. After seeing how well things were going for her, I made the decision to call my American parents and ask them to move in with me. I now occasionally travel to see my folks. We support one another, grateful that we can take care of our parents in this amazing country, and we keep putting in a lot of effort in our own enterprises.